This is where we let everybody know that you're being recorded today. So if you have any issues with that, let us know.
Please leave.
No, I think recording these sessions are good because eventually we can put them together as like training or whatever. It's really hard to get everybody in the same room at any given time. So all right, well, I may as well kick off. I think the main thing at the start that I wanted to highlight with Lunch and Learns is that they are by nature casual and informal. This is not a formal meeting where I'm going to be presenting in a really sort of as structured or as formal as, other meetings are. That's the nature of them. So yeah, they're also supposed to be a little collaborative. It's where we're sharing knowledge together, not just one-sided. I'll be sharing and leading the session, but really it's about collaborating and sharing knowledge with each other because we all use systems differently. So I am sure that I use our systems one way, and there's definitely things that I can learn from all of you guys around how you like to work. So especially with the idea of this becoming a sort of a training resource or an ongoing learning resource, I think it would be great to hear from people as we go. So feel free to jump in. Just got Sophie joining.
Hi, Soph.
Hi, Sophie.
Hello.
Right. Hi. I was just giving a little overview around
Sorry,
lunch.
Mike.
That's okay, no worries. I think there was somebody who might be joining in even later. So I am recording the session, just so you know. So we're going to be saving it as a resource tool later on for anyone else who can't make it. So feel free to eat, laugh, join in, ask questions, share your thoughts, and yeah, we'll see how we go. This is part 1 of 2 Lunch and Learn specifically for SharePoint. But I haven't really thought through the second one. I don't think it's going to be exactly the same. What I would ideally like to do is form the second one off some of the conversations that come up today. So that way they're not exactly the same, and we're actually tailoring that second session to some of the questions we might have today that I might not even have the answers to straight away. So, all right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to open here. So just for some, I guess, additional sort of context as we open, obviously we've had our SharePoint restructure project going on over the last sort of six months or more. And just at a really high level, we've gone from one main SharePoint site to several. So I just wanted to show you, I am mostly a SharePoint Online user, and I'm very aware that most of the organization uses File Explorer. That's completely fine. There's no right or wrong in that sense. But I just wanted to give like an easy visual around all of the sites that I've now got saved across the top of my browser, which are just easy tools for me to go to whenever I need to go to a new site. You have the same thing in File Explorer. So this is probably a good opportunity as well to check if anyone has not synced their sites, let me know. But your File Explorer should look something similar to this now, and it'll be different depending on the sites that you've got access to. So the other thing that I wanted to show you or let you know is that we are going to be writing up, I've been working on writing up some guidelines. So the guidelines are there to help us, I guess, not in a super strict way, but help us standardize the way that we name our files, the way that we do versioning, the way that we name our folders, just so that even though we're all working in different parts of the business, we have some kind of standard approach. It's going to make training new starters a lot easier, and it also helps with sorry, it's just a large draft behind her. It's also I've lost my train of thought. What else does it help with? Standardizing the way that we name our files and folders means that we can find things a lot easier. So when you're searching for something, even across different sites, we don't really want different parts of the business. So say if we look at these sort of as business functions, operations, network comms, fundraising, if everyone starts to do things the way that is logical to them as individuals, it means that when Michaela needs to go through and find something in different areas, it becomes really hard for her to find what she's looking for. So that's the thinking behind looking at what are the best practices out there, what are ways that we can implement some standards that aren't there to create extra work for us all, but just to give us a bit of guidance when we're thinking, okay, I've got to save, this policy. How should I name it? Where should I save it? How many versions should I have, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So, Gabby, can I ask something from this?
Sure.
So, is my understanding correct? So when you were mentioning about, like trying to do like a search function or something like that, say for example, if I want to just search up the induction package or induction materials for any new joinees. So initially, I know that this used to sit in the admin folder. In admin, there was HR and stuff. But do I now specifically need to go to operations or HR to just like kind of understand like where this could be?
Um, you know what? I can show you sort of how I do searches, and I'd love to hear from other people in the room about how you would approach the same thing. With your specific example, we probably have the right people in the room. We've got Anna here, we've got Georgia here, and myself, and we all use those documents as well.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to show everyone in this session is precisely how I search for things. So when I go to, and again, I'm using the example of SharePoint online, but I'm sure we can
do both.
We can replicate the same thing in File Explorer. So as a visual, I'm just going to move that down there because I really don't need that. So I was just on my operations site, which is where I spend a lot of my time. But when I'm looking for something that I sort of think, I actually don't know the path. That's a lot of work for people to remember where things are saved. So I click on this home button on the top left. And this actually takes me to a view that shows me all of the sites that I have access to, and not just sites, it also shows me any teams that have been set up in Teams as well. So it's essentially my portal to everything I have access to. Then I use this search bar at the very top, and that's going to search across the entire spectrum of what I have permissions to look into. It won't include anything that I don't have permissions to search for or to see. So that just goes without saying, I suppose.
Yeah.
So if I was looking for the induction sheet, I would be having a look in here. So I might, in my head, if I think it's called induction or onboarding or something to that effect, I can either look at the results that come up as examples, and then I'm like, oh, well, that's something that's in an Excel. I know that I'm looking for the template that is just maybe not coming up here. So I can either go show more results, or I can just click enter. And then I actually use these things at the top. They help quite a lot depending on what you're searching for. So you can start to narrow down on files or sites just to help you along the way, because sometimes there are several results, especially when we do such a broad search term, like just one word.
Yeah.
So again, and this might bring up some permissions or access things for you, Uma. So it's really good to note these down. I'm just going to take a quick glance using your example. So at a glance, I can see this is Shelter Network. I'm not interested in that. This looks like it's sitting in archive. I'm not interested in that. I can see a specific one for a recent new starter. So that might be what I'm looking for. It might not be. And then we've got shelter boards. What I might do with something like this, and this is me personally, it might be different to your use case because you're in finance. Are you talking about searching for something for a new starter that we're all collaborating on at that time?
Yeah, like a checklist or something like that, wherein, like we do have the salary sacrifice thing. So just, like how the new sheet looks, and then if it has templates for the staff, like when I say templates, it's like all the finance templates for them to like have it on the go for their reimbursements and stuff. So if it's all there in the induction pack, so they can just go to like one spot when like someone joins new, so that they know that these templates are all available, which is all finance related. But again, they can just use it from there and then like make their copies and then like claim reimbursements and stuff.
So I don't know whether we're talking about the same thing, and I don't want to get too caught up with individual
No,
scenarios,
that's fine.
but it is
That was-
valid. I'm
yeah.
just not sure whether we're talking about an existing induction pack process that already exists, or whether we're talking about sort of this path here. So we've got induction packs, but this is just our checklist that we all collaborate on when somebody new starts.
No, that was just an example for me to just understand where I could just go and then look for some things that I want to look. So all good.
Okay.
Gabby.
I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that you do know where to go and
No,
that you
now
can
like
find what
yeah,
you're
now
looking
like
for.
you've explained it, so yes, I do understand that I can just go to the global home and then do a search, because I was thinking that I need to go to the specific site and then do a search. So that's a good news right now. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you do use File Explorer more, I'm sure
Yeah.
it's exactly the same as long as you're clicking up the top. So at this view here, as opposed to drilling down into a specific site,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. And please jump in, team, if you use this search, but I would be typing my search term up here.
Yeah.
And the more it is also a balance between typing in a search term that has enough information on there, but not so much that you're going to narrow the search too much and not render any results at all.
Yeah, got it.
But knowing what the folder is called, or maybe the individual's name is a handy one for that kind of thing, or major terms like induction or onboarding, checklist, words like that should be pretty helpful.
Also, Uma, pretty much anything that was in like admin ops before will definitely still be in the ops team folder. Like nothing has been put in a hidden spot or like a HR restricted spot that was in the ops folder. So you should still be able to access everything that we could access before. So that's all there.
Thanks, Jade. So I've been working a little bit on putting together some guidelines. They are eventually going to link to a policy, but that's a little bit down the track. So I suppose this is just a taster of like some of the things that might be in that guideline. I didn't really want to use this session to bring up a Word document and just read text from the screen. I wanted it to be a little bit more interesting than that. So I'm going to bring up a cheat sheet, and I'm going to use this cheat sheet as like a bit of a taster and like a foundation to this session that we're in today. And I'm going to share this cheat sheet after the session with everyone. So the idea behind this is that it is like a snapshot that just highlights some of the main things that the two guidelines that I'm writing include on them, but the guidelines are just more detailed basically. So they'll have actual instructions on how to do things, whereas this is just a quick snapshot of what those items are. So it's split into two sections. So we've got the file and folder naming items and then the SharePoint usage items. So file naming is all around the actual documents that we're using, not so much the folders or the structure or the functionality of SharePoint, if that makes sense. So this has some sort of useful tips. We've got some little emojis, so at a quick glance, you can see, okay, like that's something that looks good versus something with a red cross that kind of says, that doesn't look so good. It might be hard for people to find a document if it's named that way.
Yep. Would it be fair to say, Gabby, like let's try and avoid acronyms in document titles as much as possible, because people just don't always know.
Yeah, I think that's a really good sort of a rule of thumb across the board. I know it's difficult because there are a lot of acronyms. It happens across every sector, every organization, and we get really used to I think we know from the housing example, there are Yeah.
Yeah.
NIF.
Yeah.
I learned
NIF.
about NIF the other day. So
Yeah.
we can't escape acronyms altogether. So where possible, where it's practical, I think, this is a good example. So if you're saving something like budget report, you might have an additional word in there that's a bit more descriptive. But BR and a string of numbers is going to make it pretty difficult for people to know what that is without opening it and having to have a look at the detail. So using meaningful names is very helpful. The date format is actually really important. So this is one that, as much as I'd love to say, hey, let's be flexible, and a lot of it is still legible, like it does matter to use a format that is an international standard. It makes searching for things a lot easier, and it means that things are actually ordered chronologically in the search. Otherwise, if you put, say, if you put it back to front, or if you put a mixture of numeric and alpha, the search results will be really mixed up. And depending on how you're searching, you could have 15 different files that are all mixed up, and it's going to take a lot of time for you to know which one you're actually looking for. So where possible.
Date also really helps with version control. Like for me, like especially when you come across situations where it's like version 2, final. But if you have a date, sorry, I don't know what's going on with my voice. If you have a date, then it's really clear to you can just look for the most recent date.
Yeah.
And work with that as well. So I always have a date at the end of all my documents. Like I think that just has to be standard practice. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess version control is the next sort of item there. I just noticed something that maybe is either an error of mine, or we can open it up for discussion. It was on purpose. So yeah, versions are also important. So we are collaborating on a lot of documents. Sometimes there are variations to things, or if changes are happening, and you might still want to keep versions for a little while, and that's okay. The best practice is to update versions as you update documents. So I would suggest that if you're collaborating on something, that you turn on track changes and you collaborate on the document together. And then whenever reviews are done and the document is approved, you would be updating that version number when any major changes have happened.
Yeah, so you should always save a new version when there's significant change to a document.
Correct.
So that you can go back and trace the history of that document if
Correct.
needed. Yeah.
And that's a really good point, actually, because that's a real it's not going to be for today's session, but I would love to do a session down the track where we kind of look at the comparison between using documents online versus documents on our devices through File Explorer. SharePoint Online does save version control automatically. So if you ever wanted at any given time, you can actually interrogate the history of a document. So with this document is quite new, but if say this document was, if you had gone through quite a lot of changes, and I thought to myself, oh, you know what, I actually really need to see what this document looked like on the 1st of January this year, I could actually go back and select that and restore that document on that date.
Yeah.
You can literally go back and
done that before. And I think it's a really good sort of handy backup. But I find it quite fiddly, to be honest, because you might need to restore like 10 versions to find the one that you're actually looking for. And then I think it's actually also just not as easy as it is to just open, the previous document. And then I'm always worried about like whether I'm going to overwrite my current existing version, because sometimes you have to be careful with like making sure, you don't recover a version that then overwrites your most recent version. So I mean, I personally would advocate for saving versions and not relying on that, and that's sort of just a absolute backup if needed. I don't know
I've
if
just
has anyone else done that.
I've just jotted it down as something to, because it's definitely not for this session anyway, but definitely good to get those examples. I have used it. I haven't used it a lot. I haven't used it in my role here at WCS, but I have used it and found it really helpful. So I'm just going to note that down as maybe one to explore, see if anything's changed recently, look at what that functionality is like. Maybe in desktop versus online, it's a little different. I'm not sure. I haven't used it recently. Definitely haven't used it recently. Yeah. The other thing that we wanted to call out with version control is that we are really happy for the term final to be used in our documents. So I think somebody's
I got it.
So we had a recent example where if somebody had saved, or if a group of people had saved different versions of the same document, you might seeing the term final and only once, not multiple versions of final version.
That's what I was going to
In
say.
an ideal world, we would only have, a working document. And then if you needed to be very clear, maybe Michaela, you've got some examples of certain types of contracts or documents that you want to see that signed, final, executed version that is actually the final. That's when the term final should be used.
Yeah, I think like the contracts are a good example, because one of the problems that we had, and one of the aims of this whole SharePoint project is to fix is around the contract. And so historically it's been really hard to actually find the latest version of a contract, which is quite problematic. And so with a contract, I like we're just going to move to the convention that at the end you're going to put a dash that says fully executed, and that is the naming convention for a contract. If there's versions that are unsigned or anything, like the draft workings, whatever, we're going back and forth with legal, that should it should not have that term. Only the final version that is actually signed by all signatories should have fully executed on it, and then that's the one that sits in the most obvious place, and any versions would sit in a previous folder that's called versions or something like that, because you just want it to be really clear, this is the most recent version of the document that I need. Yeah,
cool. Step 4 or point 4 is all around accessibility. So these are just some really handy and quite important tips. So you would have noticed in our date format further up, even in our naming of sort of this example here, that we've got dashes, we've got underscores, we've got dashes between the dates, between the month and year and day. And these actually all help with accessibility. Using long strings of text is not always easy for all users to actually be able to navigate properly. And that's why we've gone with a method that takes that into account as well. We want everybody across the organization to be able to find everything that they're looking for quickly and efficiently, and that we take that into account right from the very start. So it's got a few other notes in there around trying to avoid using all capitals. I know there are times that we do things in general, especially if they're our own working documents. I do want to say that this is more for our shared files. If you have a working folder with your documents and no one else needs to go in there and work on them with you or needs to find them, it's totally up to you how you name your stuff. I think that kind of ties in a little into the next point as well, around using things like miscellaneous or stuff as a term. We've all done it.
Yeah, we're all guilty of that
If
one.
it's your folder, your business, no problem. But do keep in mind when you're working on anything that is in our shared space, we do want to follow these guidelines as best we can. Then the next section is more around SharePoint. So obviously we've done a lot of work around tidying our SharePoint folders, our files, removing duplicates. Finance team did a lot of work in their section, putting everything in order and in a really logical structure so everything has its place. This is now all about trying to maintain that and trying not to dip into our old habits because it's, as the saying goes, old habits die hard, and it's definitely, it relates to SharePoint and saving stuff as well. So before you create a new folder, for example, always check if one already exists. That's point one. It might not be called exactly what you would call it, but it might be called something similar. So just have a glance through and have a look and see if it's already there.
Can I add to that, Gabby, as well, that because of the way that we've broken SharePoint up now, it's like by business functions, it's not by team structure, right? So that means you might need to save stuff in a spot that's not the part of SharePoint you usually work in. So for me, for example, like I work across, ops, network, sometimes housing, sometimes e-team. Like it doesn't matter. You're not restricted to one site. It's like where it's most appropriate. So if I was, say, the e-team writing some comms for Moona House, for example, I wouldn't really be saving that in the e-team folder because actually that relates to Moona House. So it should sit with the shelter, not with e-team. Does that make sense? And so that might apply across all of us. Like Uma, if you're doing grant, I don't know, budget calculations or something, like that obviously relates to the grant. So it saves with the grant, not in finance.
Yeah, I understand that. And also like the one that we were working, the legal and compliance part.
Yeah,
Even though like, it's a shared job, so it has to sit where it's appropriate for it to be there.
Yeah, I think another example is onboarding, like onboarding checklists and things, because that really does overlap around a lot of areas. And so we might have to have a little get together about that and go, well, does it live here for a period of time before it gets filed, or does it live somewhere, like where is that? Where is that place? So anyway, that's a good point. That's another. Cool. So, so have a look, see if something's already there, follow the existing structure. The other thing that's really important as we move into this sort of new SharePoint space is to just check with someone if you feel that you need to create a new top tier folder. And so what I mean by that is if I go to, what's a good example? Maybe network. It's a nice, neat one. The top tier only has 2 folders. That's the decision that's been made for this particular site. It works for this site. Everything that lives in here is split into these 2 top tiers. If I, for some reason, felt that I needed to create a 3rd folder, I'd be checking in with someone who I know is across this area. So in this case, I might say to Michaela, hey, Michaela, I need to save something. I think it belongs in network. Doesn't really fit in shelters or shelter network support. Can we have a chat about it? Rather than creating a brand new folder in this top tier.
Yeah. Can you go into shelter network support as well? I would also caution against adding folders at this 2nd level oftentimes because like for network specifically, I mean, there was quite a lot of work that I did to clean that and remove, I guess, the kind of junk that had accumulated in there over time. So, like examples of what I saw were like folders that all they had were like screenshots of conference programs from like 5 years ago, right? But they were sitting at the same level folder as like board support. And so then it's really like, it's really confusing when you see that. And it's like then you have to go digging to find the actual information that matters. So like we're really trying to keep it just to the information that's really relevant and important. And if there's something like if you wanted to save a conference agenda or something, I would then be looking at, okay, where does that fit in best and not creating another folder, because that's how we end up with all that clutter.
Yeah, I think another good example is probably, I think in fundraising, they've got a pretty, move this out of the way, neat structure here. And then, yeah, I would say that Olivia and Claire would say the same thing around if you're going into funder, this part here, rather than creating new ones, this is already, even though it's the second tier, it's a very specific structured second tier. Yeah, so it's a good point. Tier 1 and tier 2 are really deliberately set up.
And obviously then if you go into like, I don't know, go into corporates, for example, if we go into there. So this is then like all the corporates that we partner with. So obviously if we create a new partnership, you would then be creating a new folder because we need one. But it's like, it's kind of like, I'd say usually at least 3 levels in. It's not at the top 2.
Yeah.
Do you have a comment that I think it's always helpful, you know, you're trying to find where to save something, same as you might do if you're trying to find something, is to speak to somebody. So to ask somebody, where would you save this or where would you look for it? Because again, I think it's something that we've discovered through the process is that we have a logic to why it might be there, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's logical to others. So it helps to second check, to just get another voice of like, oh, I would think to look here, and it might be in a completely different place, but it might help to open thinking. And
I think that's a really good point, and probably especially with like the really important documents, like, you know, grant documentation, contracts, like all of those kind of things that you absolutely want to be able to refer to in the future. Like, I know Nisha always goes to Uma and I with contracts, for example, and says, please file this like as appropriate, because, you know, we don't want to create multiple avenues where that actually goes.
Yeah, I think that's also a really good point around having those sort of like you know, discussions, especially when we're here in the office. Sorry, Sophie, I know you're on your lonesome, but having those little chats where you never know what's going to come up. So if you say to somebody in the, you know, in your team or, you know, just open in the office, somebody might actually say, oh, I've actually already saved that thing over there, you know, and then you can have those chats. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, Teams is great for that too. So just popping in a little question either to a specific team or into the chat to say, hey, like, I'm a bit stuck with where to put this. Yeah, I think is a really good idea. Using shortcuts is something that I'm going to come back to because I want to do probably a little demo, but at a very high level, there are different types of shortcuts, regardless of whether you're using, irrespective, whether you're using SharePoint Online or File Explorer.
Do you want to just explain what a shortcut is?
Yes, so in terms of, these are just hints and tips, things that are going to can make your life a little easier, depending on how you like to work. So because a lot of us use File Explorer, there is a way that you can create a shortcut that basically links a folder to another location. It's essentially sort of like a copy. It's sort of like a copy, but it's essentially just a portal to the real folder. So that might be handy for you. The only thing with File Explorer shortcuts is that they are specific to your device. When you create one, you see it, but everybody else doesn't. So that's just something to keep in mind, which has its pros and cons, I suppose. So just be aware that if you want to share something with a wider team, you'd actually be needing to share it with them as a link. Hey, Jenny.
Hi, Jean.
All right, go for it, Sophie.
So in what context would I use a shortcut to a document? So I am maybe wanting to share a document with the E-team. Would that be a way?
So did you want to?
If I can jump in there, so I would say, like, always, if we're sharing documents internally, we always share them as a link, and that avoids like people saving duplicates. A shortcut, Sophie, I think a good example would be like with Moona House, for example. So we've got the half funding and bid, right? Like all of that documentation is going to sit under government grants as a site. However, at some point, like once we buy the property, that grant is effectively done and it kind of like moves into operational. So we might have a shortcut between the grant and then the Moona House operational folder to kind of show the continuity. So you can like really easily navigate from like, okay, grant was finished, it's all wrapped up. Now the rest, like documentation from this date onwards, is in this other place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. No,
Yeah.
perfect. Great. Thank you.
Then there is also a SharePoint a shortcut option as well. It works a little bit differently because you can actually link to any online space. You can link from between one site to another. You can link to just an external URL. Maybe it's a training video on YouTube that you think is really great. You might not want to download that as a file and save it. In that case, I would absolutely recommend using the shortcut method. And you can do that absolutely anywhere. And I'll check on this, but I'm pretty sure that one is visible to everybody online.
So that's basically like you're saving it. Effectively, you're saving it's not a document, but you're saving like a link to another location on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. But you can definitely use it in that same way between another WCS site or folder. Yeah, it can be any location. And then there are OneDrive shortcuts, which is really more about your own personal space. So you've got OneDrive set up per individual person. So I've got mine. It's where I can save things on the cloud, but not on SharePoint. So as an organization, we highly encourage people to use OneDrive and not share items on your desktop. So the OneDrive shortcut is great if you have something that is saved on SharePoint, for example. So it might be a contracts folder for a particular thing you're working on, but you might have another folder in your own personal working sort of document space that you kind of would love to have a really quick access, essentially a link to that other folder that actually lives on SharePoint. It's not going to change anything in SharePoint. It's just going to give you, I guess, a link that takes you there a lot easier. It's all around minimizing the amount of places you need to go to find something, essentially. And it's going to be unique to how you work. I rarely use OneDrive shortcuts, but there is definitely a place, a time and place for them, absolutely. Any questions on OneDrive or shortcuts in general right now? We can delve into it more.
I think it'll be good to explain that with some examples and actually, create them. Yeah.
So what I might do, we're almost at the, actually, you know what, this is perfect timing. So I'm just going to go through points 4 and 5, and then I'll do some demos of the shortcuts. How does that sound? Yeah. Okay, so we've done 3, archiving and retention. So Jenny, just for your knowledge, because you came in a little bit late, this cheat sheet that I'm running through today is just a snapshot of some of the items that are actually documented in some guidelines that I've been working on writing up. So the guidelines are much more extensive. They've got more instructions and more meaning, but this was just something that we can use today to go through and sort of talk about a lot of these items and share some knowledge. So archiving and retention is another area that we want to get a little bit better at as WCS. So when we did the cleanup of a lot of our files, we came across a lot of old documents, a lot of outdated stuff. We've moved a lot of things into archive folders, which eventually we would be looking at removing permanently. Depending on what kinds of documents you work on, I know the finance team, for example, have strict regulations on how long they keep things for. I think HR is in a similar position where you've got to keep things from a regulatory perspective for a certain period of time. And then we have our own operational kind of documents that aren't that strict, but we might want to keep them for a period of time before we go, yeah, I'm happy to actually delete that. So we I guess, want to start moving into a space where we're not, it goes hand in hand with versioning. So if we're using the right versions and we've got active files, we shouldn't really have 5 or 6, of the same document. We should just have the latest version. We can always then move other items into an archive folder if we just feel a little reluctant to get rid of them. But at least it tidies things up. An archive folder can sit there maybe with a year on it. Again, I know finance team are very structured. They have a really clean and neat financial use structure. It doesn't have to be to that level. But yeah, highly encourage sort of thinking about this a little bit more as you work through your files.
I would say what I do is whenever there's files that I'm working on that, have versions of them, I always create a folder which is either called versions or old versions or archive or something like that. And you move, as you create your versions, you always move it into the archive folder, and the only one that's sitting in the where you can get to it easily is the most latest one.
Yeah.
I would say anywhere where you are creating versions of documents, there should be a versions folder, and you're just moving old versions into that as kind of common practice.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments on that before we move on? All good. So the last item on the cheat sheet is around sharing files. I think we touched on this a little bit. So if you're sharing something internally within WCS, and when I say internal, I do mean hub, anyone that sits in the wider network, for the sake of sharing files, is seen as external because they're not on the Women's Community Shelters domain or network. So if you're sharing internally, using the copy link, so if I was sharing this cheat sheet, I might copy link here, and then link has been copied, and then I can paste it into this Teams chat. I can paste it into another Teams chat. I can paste it into an email. I can send it to anyone that I want to send it to that I know can access it because they're also WCS hub staff. If you're needing to share something externally, so that includes anyone else except for emails that say @womenscommunityshelters.org.au, you can still use the copy link. That still works to an extent, but when you paste it into an email, it'll come up with a red, maybe we should try it. Let's do a little demo. So I'm going to say new email. I'm going to send it to my personal email, and I'm going to say paste, and the file name's turned red, and usually, I don't know if it's lagging or testing me, but usually it'll come up with a little note, I think across the top, or across here as a banner that actually says the person that you're trying to share this with doesn't have access. You can opt to attach it, or I suppose we can even right click here. Here we go.
Yeah, excellent.
So we can click it. You can either manage access, which we probably don't want to do because we're sending to an external. So I'm going to say attach as copy.
And you didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, it's just it essentially it converts it into an attachment.
That's good.
So keep in mind, I guess, that if you do that, the file name's going to be exactly the same. So if GH receives it and does something to that file and sends it back, she's now going to be sending you potentially a file with the exact same name. It belongs in SharePoint. You're going to have a bit of homework to do to make sure that whenever you upload that file, that you're uploading the right version or the right name. That's just up to you.
And if you do try and upload a file with the same name, it will tell you. It'll be do you want to overwrite the previous version, or do you want to save as a different version or something? Because you can't just have two files of the same name.
Yeah. So I guess that the point around this as well is that you would be only using this when you really need to send something to an external. They might just be having a look at it. If they need to work on it and send it back, then it's up to you to manage how you upload that newer version. And I know that we do have some quite a few use cases where this is currently happening. It's not ideal, but we can't get away from it either.
We used to have like where you could send a link to an external person and it would work, and we've at the end of last year where we actually disabled that because we did a bit of a scan to see, and I think there were like 11,000 potential people who had access. And the problem is that depending on what you share, people could like then get into SharePoint and navigate through it into other files. So even though you think you're only sharing one file, actually
It's a link
potentially
that's
you
open.
inadvertently shared the entire site with someone. So like it's a fairly big risk. So that's why we've turned that off.
Yeah. And just one more thing that I noticed when I clicked on here where it says ignore, I mean, I wouldn't recommend doing that because that just means you're just going to send it and they're not going to be able to open it. So yeah, you'd pretty much always be sending attach as copy unless they're internal, in which case just send it to them. Well, I guess that's also a good point. If I was sending to an internal, there's not going to be any issues. So if I send this to Michaela, she's going to be able to jump into that file without any problems at all. And we can both be in there simultaneously collaborating on the exact same document at the same time. Where were we? So that was, I think, the end of the cheat sheet. We wanted to have, I'm just looking at the time. We've got quite a bit of time left.
Could we do a demo of the shortcuts?
Yeah, let's do that. So File Explorer shortcut, I might actually lean on some of you for this because I don't use this at all, but I'll tell you how my understanding of it is, and let me know if you've used it differently. So let's say I was working in here and I went into, I'm just going to go into this folder. So I'm in this folder and maybe I want to be able to shortcut to another place in SharePoint. What I would be doing is going to here. So I'm in the place that I want my shortcut to appear, right? I'm going to go to new and I'm going to go to shortcut, and then I'm going to browse for the place that I want to shortcut to. So I might open, I'll just use an easy example. I'm going to, maybe I'll go to Team Working Docs, My Working Doc. Okay. Next, I'll just call it shortcut and finish. And that's just added that shortcut with a little arrow just to show you that it looks a little bit different at this layer. So I can now easily just click on that and it's going to take me to that folder rather than me having to go the long way to find it every time I want to find it. That's my understanding of File Explorer shortcuts in a very quick and easy.
And you can shortcut between different sites. Like I was saying with the grant example, I think that's a good one. Like if you want to shortcut from grants to then like, you know, the shelter operational folder, we can do that. And then it's just a really easy flow to go, okay, grant finished. Now all other documentation is under the shelter folder.
I have an example of a shortcut that I was using pretty well, I think. When I used to respond to all the corporate volunteering inquiries, I'd have a little section in like my reception folder that had all of my templates and all of my resources that wouldn't be useful to the E-team, but had a shortcut to the resources that I needed that lived in the E-team thing.
Perfect.
So that if they were editing anything, I was having the most updated version. So I wasn't like copying set versions across and using those and then finding out, oh, there's a new version later on.
Yeah, that's a really good example.
Perfect.
Yeah, cool.
Gabby, I have a question here with regards to shortcut. So if I am creating a shortcut and then maybe if I don't know, I'm just, I need a new Excel or something like that. So if I create that Excel inside that shortcut where you showed us, so will it actually save in the actual place?
It is
So
the
I don't need
place.
to sync or do anything about it. So
Correct.
so even if I do anything here, create new folder or a file or anything like that, that will just go and sit in the main folder. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's literally just a window to that real folder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not duplicating anything. It's not creating a copy. Yeah.
Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
that's
Okay,
exactly
thank
right.
you.
So that's a good question, Uma. Yeah.
I'll go and delete that little shortcut later. Okay, so then the next, where am I with all my things? The next type of shortcut that we could look at is the SharePoint Online one. So you can do it for, like I said, basically any kind of URL. You can use it for between sites. So the use cases can be very similar. Oh, this isn't great. Let's refresh that. Nothing like a demo if it doesn't have some technical issues. Let's try that again. Let's go here. All right, team. Well, thank you for joining. Okay, I could definitely give you another example, but maybe just not right now.
Oh gosh.
I think it'll. I have faith. Go over here. All right, this is not looking very exciting. I think the example that I was talking about earlier that I might not be able to demo is linking, because the links on SharePoint Online to create shortcuts. They're called links, not shortcuts, but you can link it out to any resource. So if you're collecting, I think a good example, Michaela, is, when we're looking at resources and like maintaining resources that the team might want to look at, if those resources are actually maintained on the owner's website, maybe just having a link to that website makes more sense, so that no one has to keep maintaining these documents that are now 3 or 4 or 5 years old. You can just have, you also don't want to, you can't expect people to remember all of these websites and to navigate a website and to find where the guideline or the resource document is on that website. So I think that's a really good example potentially of where WCS might want to use it, outside of linking between sites, just for personal navigation reasons.
Yeah, I think that's a good example, because we've also recently just gone and done some updates in Ops Central and found basically like there's a whole bunch of documents in there that, were like 8 years old, and the ACNC has released like 8 versions, since we've got that document. So instead of downloading that specific document, if we just link to it, then as that organization updates it, it'll just automatically update for us as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of like cuts out a layer of work.
Yeah.
For us. Yeah.
Well, sorry about the technical issues. But yeah, I just wanted to have a look and sort of show you what that what that would look like as an online demo. The other item that I had noted down to demo was sharing the files, which we've already done. Another thing that I haven't mentioned in the cheat sheet, but does get it is in the guideline, is collaborating with externals. So we have had a few more scenarios recently in the organization where we've wanted to create a SharePoint or a collaboration space to store files for particular projects that involve complete externals. So we're talking about maybe developers or people like Temple and Webster, external partners. And so we do have a solution for that is currently being used, and it essentially is the creation of a team in Teams that sits separate to our WCS SharePoint space. So we can feel more comfortable about having these kind of like pockets that are only open to a certain list of individuals. We have owners at WCS, IT are involved in creating that space right at the beginning, but then it gives you this space where you can save files, you can you can chat, you can have different channels. So that's something that we're dipping into more and more. We've got a couple of projects being used that way. And yes, I just want to share that with everyone because it's an alternative to being able to share our files with other people when we've kind of restricted our WCS SharePoint space for security.
And people can't set that up on them by themselves, Gabby, right? Like
Correct.
it has to be a request through IT if you do want to do that.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm kind of coordinating that. I've had one recently for the Biani project. Glenfield project has one as well. So in that case, I just had a request from the sort of main contact in our teams. So I think the last one was Zoe came to me and said, hey, can we set one up for Biani? And so she's an owner, Carrie Ann's an owner. They can manage the access, but the actual creation of the site sort of comes through me and IT. We kind of make sure that we're really happy with how we've structured that right from the start so that we're sort of comfortable with it. And then the teams can manage access themselves. So it's not that restrictive once it's set up.
Yeah. So if there's a new person that joins the project, you can add them in yourself.
Yeah. So we want people to be able to, be able to do that very quickly and easily. It's just the very beginning, which is a quick process too. Yeah.
Hey, Gab, sorry, can I ask a question on that? So are you saying that if IT approves of some request like that, we would be able to share, like, say, a bigger file or something like that with like an external party, but of course with approval, and then they would be able to access only that particular like link, like file that we share with them, right?
Correct.
Not like, you know how.
Yeah. And it
Okay.
can be a folder with multiple things in there as long as it's,
But Uma, it makes sense for like projects where you need to be collaborating on a lot of stuff all the time. So it's not like just one or two attachments. It's like, maybe there's 50 documents that we're working on. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So as an example, Uma, I've worked with the E team to use file transfer to transfer a big document. So we do have capability of doing that. If you have one document you can't send via email. Is that helpful?
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I wonder, Uma, like with purpose accounting, like how do we currently share files with them? Because potentially, I mean, maybe we could have a team where we do that.
That was exactly what I was thinking when I actually asked that question, because every month we send them, like once a month is closed, we send them like multiple files on an email, like as like say like 6-7 different Excel attachments and stuff. So exactly. So that was my thinking.
Yeah,
about
I think
it.
that
So-
would be a good example because we, effectively have an external CFO who obviously needs access to a lot of.
I think the only other thing, I think, we could definitely have a look into that. The only thing that I should have noted that I didn't during this process is that the security levels are different. So we do have like a strong encouragement to not upload anything that's like sensitive into these shared collaboration spaces as we, as opposed to our SharePoint structure. They do have different levels of security. So IT have made that very clear. Yeah, so depending on what you're sharing, if there is information on there around WCS that we wouldn't, want to risk, then
I guess, is it any different though to emailing it?
That's a good question. I
Once
can ask
you
what the
email it,
difference
like it
is.
can be forwarded on to anyone as well, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I suppose
That's a
it's
great point because they're probably hosted on the same server. Are servers here in Australia or overseas?
My guess would be they're overseas, but I don't actually know.
But then you can always,
Same.
if it's Excel spreadsheets and things, can't you just password protect them and everyone
You
have the
can,
right to
Great
password?
idea.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, you can, and
fantastic.
we could put like we do have some like the shelter addresses spreadsheet is confidential, so you have to have a password for that one.
Yeah.
And like you can even store those passwords in LastPass so that you don't.
And you should.
Yeah, because if you lose the password to your Excel document, there is no recovering that. There's no like I forgot my password, it's gone.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Michaela.
Yeah.
A bit like LastPass.
Yes.
Oh
yes,
my
a bit like
gosh,
that, yeah. If
Georgia.
you lose that
So-
password, yeah.
Oh my gosh, Georgia, I need you before you leave. So
Oh,
we can just
I got you. Don't worry. We'll book in
Okay.
a time. We'll have a look at it.
I'll book you in. Oh my lordy. Okay.
All right, team. Well, we're at time. So that kind of wraps up our part 1 lunch and learn for SharePoint. If you have any feedback, please let me know. I'm going to share the cheat sheet. In time, we'll share the guidelines as well, so you can look at those and we can go through those that have more detail on them. But if you have any ideas or requests for our next one, please let me know.
Thanks, Cabs.
Does that help? Like everyone understand like how we're doing things? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
it
is
does.
amazing. Yeah. I like the hygiene around naming documents because I never know what to do. I just make it up. So that's great. Thank you.
Thanks for attending. I'm glad you joined.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Sorry, I was a
All
bit
right.
late. I had an appointment I had to go to.
That's okay, Jenny. No worries. The whole thing's being recorded anyway.
Okay, cool.
Surprise.
There you go. Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right.
Thank
Okay,
you again.
Bye.
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 That was so
Thanks,
clear.
Abby.
That was so well done.
No
The
worries.
recording.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's
Oh, it's on mine.
oh, you've closed.
Yeah,
it,
yeah, it'll come up.
How annoying that last